James stepped onto the bus, the familiar hiss of the doors closing behind him. The evening air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain, but inside, the warmth of the bus wrapped around him like an old, worn-out coat. It was a routine ride, just another end to just another day. At least, that's what he thought. He moved down the aisle, scanning for an open seat, when his gaze landed on an elderly woman sitting by the window. Something about her stopped him mid-step. The soft silver of her hair, the way she rested her chin on her hand as she gazed outside. It was oddly familiar, like a song he hadn't heard in years but still knew every note to. James felt a strange tug in his chest, an instinctive feeling that he knew this woman. But that was impossible, wasn't it? He convinced himself it was just a passing thought and took the seat beside her. The scent of lavender and old books lingered around her, stirring something deep in his memory. He stole a glance at her profile. High cheekbones, a slightly upturned nose, and a pair of striking blue eyes that reflected the city lights outside. Then suddenly it hit him. Evelyn. His heart skipped a beat. Evelyn Thompson. The girl who had once been his entire world. The one he had spent endless summer nights talking to under the stars. The one he had shared secrets and dreams with. The one he had lost to the winding, unpredictable roads of life. It had been decades. More years than he cared to count. Could it really be her? Swallowing the sudden lump in his throat, he cleared his voice and said, almost hesitantly, "Excuse me, you wouldn't happen to be Evelyn Thompson, would you?" The woman turned slowly, her brows knitting together as she studied his face. For a moment, there was no recognition. And then, like a sunrise breaking over the horizon, her expression shifted. James. Her voice, though aged with time, still held the same warmth. James Carter. A breath he didn't realize he'd been holding rushed out of his chest. He let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. "I almost didn't recognize you." Evelyn's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "I could say the same. My goodness, what are the odds?" James exhaled a quiet laugh. "Slim, I'd say. Life has a funny way of circling back, doesn't it?" Evelyn nodded, a distant look in her eyes. "It really does." For a moment, they just sat there, studying each other, both caught somewhere between nostalgia and disbelief. Then, as if an invisible dam had broken, the words started flowing. They talked, hesitant at first, then more freely, as if no time had passed at all. They reminisced about their childhood summers by the lake, about the ridiculous dares they had given each other, promises they had made as foolish, hopeful teenagers. "Do you remember that one summer when we swore we'd always keep in touch?" Evelyn asked, tilting her head. James chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, we weren't very good at keeping that promise, were we?" Evelyn sighed, a bittersweet look passing over her face. "Life has a way of getting in the way." He nodded, his fingers tapping absent-mindedly against his knee. "But maybe life's giving us another shot now." Evelyn smiled softly. "Maybe it is." Their conversation drifted to the present. Evelyn spoke about her years as a teacher, about the children and grandchildren who filled her life with joy. James told her about the places he had traveled, the people he had met, the way he had spent years searching for something he hadn't even realized he was missing. As the bus rumbled forward, James found himself wondering, was this fate? A coincidence? Or just one of those rare moments in life where the past and present collided in the most unexpected way? Evelyn's stop was approaching. He could feel time slipping away again, just like it had all those years ago. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small notebook, and tore out a page. Scribbling something down, she handed it to him. "My number," she said simply, a hopeful glint in her eyes. "This time, let's not let the years slip away." James took the piece of paper, feeling its weight far beyond what it actually was. "I won't make the same mistake twice." Evelyn stood, offering him one last smile before stepping off the bus. James watched her disappear into the evening, something warm settling in his chest. The bus pulled away, carrying him forward, But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was returning to something, someone important. That night, James sat at his desk, staring at the small slip of paper. He hesitated for only a moment before picking up his phone and dialing. The phone rang once, twice. The third time, James found himself holding his breath, fingers tightening around the slip of paper as if it were some kind of lifeline. Then, just as doubts started creeping in, there was a soft click on the other end. "Hello." Evelyn's voice was warm but laced with curiosity. James exhaled, allowing a small smile to tug at his lips. "So, I guess I'm proving I still know how to keep a promise." A pause. Then a chuckle. "Well, James Carter, consider me impressed." They spoke for hours that night. About everything. About nothing. About the things they never had a chance to say before life pulled them in different directions. Evelyn talked about her late husband, about how love had found her in unexpected ways, about the grief that followed when it was taken away. James listened, nodding along, feeling her words settle deep in his chest. And in return, he told her about his own past, the people who had come and gone, the moments of joy, the regrets. "You know," he admitted after a while, "I always wondered what would have happened if we'd stayed in touch." Evelyn was silent for a beat before she said softly, "Me too." A comfortable silence stretched between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then Evelyn's voice broke through. "I'm meeting a friend for coffee tomorrow morning. There's a little cafe down on 8th Street. Why don't you join us?" James hesitated, not because he didn't want to, but because something about the invitation felt bigger than it was. As if she sensed his hesitation, Evelyn added, "It's just coffee, James. No expectations, no what-ifs. Just two old friends catching up." James smiled. "All right, I like that." The next morning, he found himself standing outside the cafe, hands in his pockets. Through the window, he spotted Evelyn sitting at a corner table, chatting with a woman who looked to be about her age. A lifetime ago, he would have walked in with the easy confidence of a boy who thought time was endless. Now he took a slow breath before stepping inside. Evelyn looked up and grinned. "You actually came. Told you I keep my promises," he said with a smirk, sliding into the seat across from her. The morning passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Evelyn's friend, Margaret, turned out to be just as sharp and witty as she was, teasing James as if they had known each other for years. "I like him," Margaret said to Evelyn with a knowing glance. "He fits right in." James chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the hours slipped by, he realized something. He felt at home. Over the next few weeks, the meetings became more frequent. Coffee turned into walks in the park, which turned into dinners, which turned into long conversations that stretched late into the night. It wasn't just nostalgia that brought them together. It was something deeper. One evening, as they strolled along the riverside, Evelyn stopped, looking out at the water. "You know," she murmured, "when I was younger, I used to think reunions were just for movies. That real life didn't work like that." James glanced at her. "And now?" She turned to him, smiling softly. "Now, I think life surprises us in the best ways." James nodded. "Yeah, it really does." They stood there for a while. Two people who had lived entire lives apart, only to find their paths crossing again. And for the first time in a long, long while, James felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.